Good morning. This is your stat sensei, Mr. Spensei, and this is the exit ticket on the normal distribution. And we're going to focus on the standard normal here. So here we have 320 freshmen at Somerset High School took an algebra test. The scores were distributed normally. That tells me we get to use a normal with a mean of 75 and a standard deviation of 7. So mean is 75, standard deviation is 7. What percentage of the scores are between 61 and 82? So drawing my picture. Our mean is 75. And the scores are 61 to 82. So 61 is below 75. The 82 is above it. And I don't really care exactly where you have it, just so you do. And they want in between. So we're going to do a norm CDF because it's normal. The lower part of my shading is 61. The upper part of my shading is 82. Lower, upper. My mean is 75. And my standard deviation is 7. Make sure we label those. So, calculators, second, vars. Oops. Second vars, normal, CDF, lower 61, upper 82, mean 75, standard deviation was 7. When we do that, we find out that about 82%, 0.8185, box our answer, 4 decimal places, and truncate. What percentage of the scores are between 75 and 82? So once again, our mean is 75, but we're actually going to go from 75 to 82. Now, so this is a norm CDF because we're working with a low and we're working with a normal. Our lower bound of our shading was 75. Our upper bound was 82. Our mean happened to be 75, and we said our standard deviation earlier was 7. So lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal, CDF, 75, 82. And the 75 and 7 is already there. So 0.3413. Now that's about half of 68%. Well, this is one standard deviation above. But we only went one above. We didn't have the one below. If we'd had the one below, then it would have been 68%. All right. How many percentage of the scores are between 61 and 89? So 75. Well, 61 is below. 89 is above. And so we have a norm CDF. Our lower part of our shading was 61. Our upper part of our shading was 89. Our mean was 75, and our standard deviation was 7. Lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal, CDF, 61, 89. We end up with 95%. All right. So 0.9544. Well, that makes sense. And here's why that makes sense that it'd be 95%. Because if we add 14, that's 2 standard deviations above, we get to 89. And 61 is 2 standard deviations below. So that's why it's 95%. Plus or minus 2 standard deviations. What percentage of the score are less than 61? So we have a mean of 75, a lower bound of 61. 61's below 75. And we're going to go to negative infinity because it said less than. So this is going to be a norm CDF, negative infinity, 61, mean is 75, standard deviation of 7, lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal CDF. And remember, negative 9 raised to the 99th power. And then 61. We end up with 0.0227. 0.0227. What percentage of scores is greater than a score of 96? Well, 96 is above 75. So we're looking to go to from 96 to positive infinity. Once again, still a norm CDF. Our lower bound is 96. Our upper bound is positive infinity. Our mean is 75, and our standard deviation is 7. Lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal CDF, 96. Positive infinity, which is 9.99, 75.7. And we end up with less than 1%, really about 0.1%. So 0.0013. Approximately how many algebra students scored between 61 and 89? This is different. This says how many. Now, I haven't shown you how to do that. So let's find our probability. Well, it turns out we did this earlier, but we'll go ahead and redo it. So we have a mean of 75, a lower bound of 61, and an upper bound of 89. So we're going to calculate that probability. We're going to go norm CDF 61, 89, 75, and 7. Lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal CDF 61, 89. And we end up getting 0.9544. But that's the probability. And that's not what they asked for. They asked for how many. Well, how many students were there? Where there were 320. So 95% of that 320. So we're going to take this 0.9544 and multiply it by 320. And when we do that, we find out that it's about 305. That's the about symbol, 305 students. So about 305 students made between a 61 and an 89. Approximately how many students scored between a 68 and an 82? Well, this is plus or minus 1 standard deviation, so it should be about 68%, but let's check that out. So this is 68, 7 below. This is 82, 7 above. That's plus or minus 1 standard deviation. So when we do our norm CDF, we should get a value of about 68%. Well, my lower is 68. My upper is 82. The mean is 75. The standard deviation is 7. Lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal CDF. 68, 82. So we end up getting that 68% that we expected, but it's 0.6826. But that's a probability. and they didn't ask for the probability, they asked for how many. Well, how many students were there? There were 320. So we were just going to multiply. So times 320, times 320. And on these, I round the way I'm supposed to. But I get about 218 students. So approximately 218 students. Approximately how many students scored between 61 and 75? All right. Well, 61 and 75. So let's take a look at it and see what happens. So 75 is the upper bound, 61 is the lower bound. We're looking for this. So it should be a norm CDF. 61 is the lower, 75 is the upper, 75 is also the mean, and our standard deviation was 7. Lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Second vars, normal CDF. 61, 75, 75, 7. And we get about 47%, which is incidentally about half of 95. So 0.4772, that's my probability. But they said how many? So how many would be times the 320? So times 320. And we find out that it's about 152.7. So about 153. I'm going to round up on this. So about 153 students. And the last one, approximately how many algebra students scored between an 89 and 96? '89, 96. So this is going to be a norm CDF. Our lower is 89. Our upper is 96. Our mean is 75. Our standard deviation is 7. Lower, upper, mean, standard deviation. Don't want to forget those labels. Second vars, norm CDF, 89, 96. And we end up getting a probability of 0.0214. But it didn't ask for the probability. It said how many, which means I have to multiply by 320. So I'm going to multiply by 320 times 320. When I do that, I end up with 6.8. So about 7 students. So approximately 7 students. All right. I appreciate you watching and hope to see you on the next one. Thank you.